So I was going through the news today and I figured why not we have a really good discussion instead of talking about some of the more boring stuff that are going on in the Transformer world. And I came across a beautiful tweet by Walrus Law. If you haven't checked him out, he's one of the cooler individuals to follow on Twitter. And he did a nice little post where he showed some more, I guess we'll call them virgin art, if you will, of the three different regions of Transformers the movie 1986 posters. The 86 movie in America, how it was in Japan, and I guess it was a comic book scan of the original UK poster. And they're just very gorgeous to look at. I mean, I have the original 86 movie poster, a tattered one from my childhood, hanging up now in in the collection room. I would love to own one day some huge, amazing version of the Japanese one as a lifelong fan of Hot Rod. And after this, I have a greater appreciation for the UK one too. And what I figured we're going to do today is I kind of want to deconstruct the three posters and what's really going on here. What I want to talk about is for each poster, perspective and final product. And perspective and final product is really important because all three of these posters have very different perspectives when it comes to their regions. And I'll get what I mean, and you'll understand as I go through it. So if you want, you could pull up maybe Walrus Law's tweet, or if you could just find three images of the three different posters, UK, Japan, and the American Transformers, the movie 1986 posters, and you could kind of play along and see what I'm getting at. So we're going to start first with the 1986 poster. The most iconic poster of them all, has been parodied on multiple covers of Transformer media and comic book covers and everything. But let's start with perspective. So on this poster, we have Ultra Magnus shooting up in the sky against Unicron, along with RC, Springer, Cup, and Blur in the forefront. And in the background, we have Galvatron. We're going to assume either Scourge or one of the sweeps, but we'll say Scourge, Cyclonus, or the Armada, whatever you want to call them. We have the Revenge in the background. The Revenge is Galvatron's ship. We would not learn the name of that until years later, with all kinds of sketch art and everything. And then in the background on the Autobots, if you look very carefully, you could see that of Rodimus Prime in alt modes, a piece of the background that people usually forget were there, and Wheelie also in alt mode in the background. Now, from a perspective, you have to understand when this poster was put together, no one really knew in 1986 going into this who these new characters are. I mean, that's the crazy thing about it. Imagine, you're going to see Transformers the movie after watching season 1 and season 2, and you see this movie poster, and not a single person on this poster is someone you recognize. Imagine like there was a Beast Wars movie and you didn't see Optimus Primal or Cheetor or Dinobot or anything. It was all new faces. It would be mind-blowing. Like, who are all these new characters? Literally, a dozen characters on this poster, and a single one of them we don't know who they are. And even like the guy in the Prime front and center isn't even Optimus Prime, but an Optimus Prime repaint. So it was quite a ballsy move. But what's even more interesting is that, going into the movie, no one really knew who these characters were, and the spoilers, if you will, were kind of kept to a minimum, and that I'll get into that when we get to the other posters. I mean, if we even go, back in the day, the closest thing that we have, and we still have it a little bit today, is we have what I like to call toy spoilers, which is sometimes, you haven't seen the movie yet, but the toys have come out, and there's little pieces of information within those toys that could somehow give us an indication of what's going on with the story and spoil things. And the 1986 toys, they came out way before the original August 8th, 1986 release date. I could confirm that myself because I remember that specifically as a child. And it would have to say, honestly, I'd have to say as early as June and July they started showing up, maybe even earlier than that, because I remember it was already summer vacation from school. And it's absolutely crazy because when you look at, like, let's say you looked at Ultra Magnus's tech spec, you bought the toy, you read the tech spec, and there's the suggestion of him being, uncomfortable with the mantle of leadership. but presented as a strong commander, and always like following Optimus Prime's orders. So right away there's this suggestion, oh, this guy's going to be leader. He's the next leader of the Autobots, even though it says, oh, he's city commander and everything. And, even when you open up the catalog that came with it, it's the same thing too. It's like this powerful robot, that's the city commander that guards the Autobot city. So there was that huge suggestion of that. And then you look at Rodimus Prime, which we would all know becomes the leader. I mean, if you're listening to this podcast and you don't know that, I have some homework for you to do beforehand. And with Rodimus, if you read his tech spec, it's more of like, he's a vanguard, a little hot-headed, but not really a lot of suggestions that he's the next leader of the Autobots, unless you look at that Prime, after the Rodimus. I mean, the name is the giveaway, but otherwise nothing. And even in the tech spec, his little piece of information there, futuristic superhero, as they refer to it, fighting to save the Earth from the evil Decepticons, almost like a Japanese kind of writing, to save the Earth. But then, of course, the spoiler in that is because within the Rodimus Prime tech spec, it says, can be hot-headed at times. You look at the Hot Rod tech spec, and it has the same thing, too. Has the exact same, suggestion that he can be hot-headed. It's literally one for one in both tech spec quotes. And that's even if you ignore, their color schemes are pretty similar, and they both have that yellow flaming, chest and the spoiler at the bottom. I mean, you could obviously, anyone puts two and two together would figure out that these two are the same character, but there was no suggestion that he would be the leader. It was always implied through the toy spoilers, and I'm doing air quotes here, that Ultra Magnus is going to be the next leader. And the poster suggested that, with this whole new crew of toys with him. And Rodimus Prime being in the background there, maybe he's going to get a rebuilt upgrade. Maybe he's going to be killed by Galvatron, and the Junkions will rebuild him as Rodimus Prime, this, really strong, second in command. Who knows? The speculation that could have gone on back then, back in the day, would have been probably in that similar manner, because clearly, judging by the way the poster is selling it to us here, Ultra Magnus is the next leader of the Autobots. And this giant, I guess we'll call it a Death Star looking kind of item in the sky, which we now know is Unicron, is the main big bad going on here. And we knew that Unicron would transform because of early trailers that pretty much spoiled that for us very early on. So if you were one of those people like me that kind of like to avoid trailers, at least that big reveal would have been a big deal. But for many, they kind of knew that thing in the sky, that's a Transformer also. People have always suggested that also this poster is kind of a mild homage to one of the old Star Wars posters, especially with the way how RC is, and Army of Darkness would do a similar kind of homage years later. Strong potential. Yeah, I could see that. But it also looks very similar to a lot of other Japanese art and stuff like this. We've never really learned who drew this poster. We do know the information for the others, but this one we don't know. Could have been Fleur O'Deary. Could have been. But we don't know, really. So let's move to the next one, and we'll start with the Japanese one. Now, the reason why the Japanese one is interesting, because people refer to it as the spoiler poster. Because when you look at this poster, you now have Unicron with his head, so it's clearly already spoiling that he transforms. You have Unicron in his alt mode, and then you have Rodimus or Hot Rod there with the Matrix, more Hot Rod because it doesn't have the facial markings and stuff like that, the little cues. Hot Rod with the Matrix, spoiling that he's going to be the one who has it. We have RC, Daniel in the exosuit, Blur, we got Cup, we got a very almost brownish kind of, Roadbuster Wrecker's color Springer without his mohawk, very toy accurate. And we have Ultra Magnus. And what's also fascinating is if you look in the background, this is a little fun fact. So you see the Revenge in the background there, but it's kind of like upside down flying. and it's from a top shot upside down flying. Now, here's the funny thing. Fleur O'Deary originally, when he designed the Revenge, he intended that the ship would actually be flown upside down. And for whatever reason, it ended up being depicted flying the other way. So in this piece of art, it's actually depicted the correct way. It's actually depicted flying the correct way. And actually, another interesting thing about this poster is the artist who did it. So the artist who did it is known as Yoshiyaku Takani. And for people who don't know who he is, he's a very, very, very well-known water paint artist for the Gundam and Macross and Dan Cougar model kit world. All the 1970s and early 1980s I think it was called the B Club Bandai kits and stuff, which had like, you know, Johnny Ridd and everything. All those beautiful box art for those model kits were done by him. And so he has a huge history with the Gundam world and all the art he's done. And this was one of the few Transformer jobs he ever did. The only other two that he ever did is years later, he would go on to do one of the DVD covers for the Japanese DVDs. And it was the famous cover that had, and it really shows how Yoshi really isn't a Transformer fan, because he drew that cover with Megatron and Ravage and Starscream's on the cover, but clearly he was using toys as a reference, so he gave Starscream a cone head, which is hilarious because, you know, the G1 Starscream toy, you could technically give him a cone head. And then years later, of course, he would do one of the covers for the Japanese reprints of the Marvel comics in their Classics IDW collection. So he's someone who he's not really part of the Transformer world, but he clearly has done stuff that was really important, at least in this case with the 1986 Japanese movie poster. And it makes me wonder that maybe his references that he got from Fleur O'Deary for the art, which might even explain, you know, maybe also the likes of Springer not having his mohawk. And, you know, but then again, it makes me wonder, because then RC is done properly. Who knows? Like, it's hard to say, because we'll get into the perspective afterwards. But yeah, the Revenge being drawn upside down, which was originally Fleur O'Deary's intention, is very fascinating. Now, let's talk about the perspective, though. So the thing is that even though we label this as the spoiler poster, it's primarily from a different perspective, because Japan did not get the 1986 movie in theaters. That would actually not happen for many years. It wasn't until October 21st, 1989, more than 3 years after the airing of Season 3, or AKA Transformers 2010, as it was called in Japan, Generation 1, would happen. So, but the thing is that they already knew, because Season 2 ended, they were going into Season 3, and all the different Comic Bonbon magazines and Story Page magazines and TV Magazine, all these different magazines in Japan were talking about the 86 movie and pretty much spoiling 100% what's going on. And you go into Season 3 knowing already Rodimus is the leader. Not really knowing all the little fine details, you know, because they didn't have the 86 movie, but they knew it. They knew this going into it. It's kind of like how if somehow by some way, you know, you didn't have Empire Strikes Back, you just had episode 4 and episode 6, and they kind of got filled in. Oh, by the way, yeah, Luke and Vader's Luke's father. Yeah, just go into the movie knowing that. And so it's the same thing. They went into Season 3 already knowing this, already familiar with the Rodimus character, that by the time they finally did get the 86 movie in 1989, the cat was already out of the bag. The genie was already out of the bottle. It was no surprise. So instead, they rather do a cover that was more iconic and representative of what this story entails, and that's the story of the crowning of Hot Rod into Rodimus Prime and becoming the leader. So everything here that would be considered a spoiler is more, I guess, kind of painted after the fact, where nothing is a spoiler anymore. Kind of like doing an iconic piece of art of the death of Optimus Prime years later or something, because we all know that it happened. So very, very cool stuff. Very awesome. Easily my favorite poster, but it's more of a bias just because of how beautiful it looks. But there's just so much going on here from a perspective and a story perspective that yeah, I don't even know where to begin. Like, it's just a gorgeous one. I really do. And the last one is the United Kingdom poster, and I've grown to appreciate this one a lot more. I kind of slept on this one all these years until I really, like, combed over it for the first time in a while. And it's the same thing too. This was a poster that we don't know the artist of origin, but it looks like it's a lot of trace stuff from the movie itself, from frames of the movie mixed with some original art. I do have some speculation, but don't confirm it from me. Like this is not, take it with a grain of salt. But some of the coloring is very familiar to the early coloring of some of Flero Deary's designs, specifically Galvatron. I don't know if it's just the choice of coloring for the poster, but there's a lot of interesting similarities to what Flero Deary did with some of the original designs of the characters. And again, when we look at this poster, again, let's talk perspective. Optimus fighting Megatron. We have we'll start from top to bottom actually. So we have Unicron about to eat one of the Autobot moons. We got the Revenge. It looks like it's getting blown up there, but that never happens. We have one of the Autobot shuttles, which were clearly from the Pan scene when the Dinobots were dropped off, but instead, if you look very carefully, it clearly looks like not the Dinobots being dropped off, excuse me, when the Autobot shuttle that got captured by the Decepticons, and you obviously have like Megatron and all the Decepticons getting out of it as Hot Rod was blowing it up. We have Galvatron over there, clearly, which wasn't part of that crew because you would have Megatron and Galvatron if they were jumping out of that shuttle. There's a lot of weird things going on here. Same thing, because if you go to the right, you have Astro Train, but then you have the Dinobots when they jumped out of their Autobot shuttle that was being driven by Optimus Prime and Sunstreaker. Dinobots destroy Devastator. You got Cyclonus, same thing too, when he was doing his shooting of Ultra Magnus. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on in that first top half there to kind of deconstruct. Getting to, again, Optimus versus Megatron battle. Then we get to behind Optimus's leg there. It looks like Ultra Magnus drawn very crudely there, but it's kind of hard to tell. We got Grimlock using his flames. We have RC, we got Hot Rod, we got a unique... Now, here's one where I'm going to talk to the audience here. We got two cars in the front. We got, obviously, Hot Rod with a massive hot-rodded engine there, done in his toy style. And the toy style is the spoilers kind of held up from two side connections instead of the center, which is usually how it's depicted in most fiction. So this is more toy inspired. And then we got a car behind him, this blue car that, is it a different interpretation of Blur? Is it supposed to be RC trailing behind him because we have RC and Hot Rod to the left there and they just miscolored it? And it's obviously not RC's alt mode, but maybe just, an early design of it. Is it supposed to be Cup because Hot Rod and Cup are, getting into Autobot City and it's just an early depiction of Cup? Is this... I don't know, is this supposed to be Jazz? And it's just a very crudely done Porsche that's not based off of his GT design. Who do you think that car is? Who could it possibly be? And same thing with the robot that's shooting up. It looks like it's almost shooting at Galvatron here. At Megatron. This character looks like Galvatron, judging by the squares behind his leg and the arm cannon. But the coloring is so all over the place and the head sculpt and everything. Possibly not. And a burning... Autobot City in the background on Cybertron. So much going on this poster. Absolutely crazy. But again, from a perspective, keep in mind, this movie also, same story, just like how August 8th was when the original 1986 movie came out in Canada and in the United States. In the UK, see, according to this poster here, and it was taken from a comic book, it says... at local cinemas from December 12th. See local listings, blah, blah, blah. According to everywhere I've looked in the past, it always used to say that the UK got it on December 5th. So I don't know which is the correct one. Maybe some UK people could correct me on it here. I always assumed it was December 5th, 1986. This poster says the 12th. Maybe it's a different local playing, but I don't know. Either way, but again, the perspective is people going into this movie... They didn't expect, at least with this poster, as opposed to the two previous posters, this features original characters from Season 1 and Season 2. So you were oh, hey, there's Grimlock. I know Grimlock, the Dinobots. Hey, there's Optimus and Megatron. I know those guys, and they're being, primarily focused on here. Everyone else, maybe Astro Train, if you're really familiar with that alt mode. but everyone else here is kind of a new character. But at least with this poster screamed, oh, the Transformers that I know. You know, the Transformers that I'm familiar with. And so at least with the UK crew and Europe, they would have been seeing a poster that really reflected heavily what they were familiar with. And so not a lot of spoilers here, obviously showing some new characters, but not much of a spoiler here or a different featurette of what's going to be happening. The ultimate adventure, as it says here, as opposed to, you know, beyond good, beyond evil, beyond your wildest imaginations. That's more known from the American poster. But yeah, so those are those three posters, and it's really interesting to kind of break these down and the perspective and how, you know, today we have leaked scripts and all kinds of news and billions of trailers that are constantly put on YouTube and spoiler after spoiler after spoiler. And then the day after the movie comes out, or the night that it comes out, everyone already tweeting out their opinions, and you have to avoid Facebook. Back in the day, hey, you could practically go the entire film duration of a movie in theaters and not get spoiled once. Because if you didn't see the trailer on TV and you didn't have a friend that had a big mouth, you could probably wait for that VHS release and learn the truth then. But back then, you know, this was all we got. And I just wanted to just cover that. It was just an interesting little trip down memory lane of easily not only just the best Transformer movie ever made of everything we've gotten thus far, but also probably, in my opinion, one of the best pieces of Transformer fiction ever created. And I know that whenever I try to introduce someone, especially before the Michael Bay movies, when I always tried to show someone what Transformers was to me and what I love about Transformers, I would always show them the 86 movie, as opposed to, let's say, the G1 cartoon or at the time, let's say, a comic book. I would show them this, and then if they liked this, you know, maybe select season 1 episodes of G1, and then I'd jump right into Beast Wars with them, just so I don't look like a lunatic. Show them the really good stuff. But yeah, this was an interesting discussion. Let me know what you think about this stuff. Let me know what you think of that little dude there, also in the UK one. Maybe I'm missing something here. I don't know. He just. To me, and it's just a stretch here, but to me, I swear, every time I look at him, I keep getting this, like, Armada Blur, aka Micron Silverbolt. Like, he just kind of reminds me of that, but there's also, like, you know, you have, I think his name was Tailpipe, who was one of the Micromasters. I think it was Tailpipe. I know I'm probably getting the name wrong. But, you know, there's also a lot of Micromasters that had a similar shape and color scheme, so I don't know. Who is this guy? Who is this guy? Maybe just some generic... It's a wacky poster, this UK one. I have a greater appreciation for it, but definitely let me know what you think. Which one was your favorite and why?